Hello readers, I'm the avid reader and today we're reviewing The Plot Against America, written by Philip Roth in 2004. So this is an alternate history book where Roosevelt loses the 1940 election to Charles Lindbergh. Upon becoming president, Lindbergh signs an understanding with Hitler and Japan that the United States will be neutral in World War II. And this novel takes place over a couple years, so it starts out in June 1940 and it ends in October 1942. And you see the gradual development of anti-Semitism in the United States, kind of, with it ending in an explosion of anti-Semitism. And the perspective you follow this from is a 9 or 10-year-old Jewish boy in New York, part of a Jewish family there. The Lindbergh administration, for example, creates an Office of American Absorption, which is used to encourage Jews to integrate into American society, so to disperse Jews across the United States, send them to flyover states. So Jewish children during summer are sent to work on Christian farms. And you have this Jewish guy throughout this book called Walter Winchell, who's very critical of the Lindbergh administration, and he calls them Nazis and fascists, and he gets fired from his job eventually as a journalist, so Winchell declares his candidacy for the next election. But he ends up getting assassinated. And after that, Lindbergh suddenly disappears and you have anti-Jewish riots that break out. You have martial law declared by the vice president, Walter Wheeler, who becomes acting president, and he arrests a bunch of people, including some Jews and former politicians like Roosevelt, and including a rabbi that's actually been working with the Lindbergh administration. And then Lady Lindbergh swoops in back to the White House and basically declares that this is illegitimate, and she gets the people and Congress and the Supreme Court to side with her and get rid of Wheeler as president, and then they hold a snap election and get Roosevelt re-elected as president. And Roosevelt declares war on Germany, they win World War II, and Wheeler is pardoned. And you'd think that that would be the end of the book, but no, the chronology in this book is a bit screwed up. So after you get this exposition of info dump in the penultimate chapter of how everything ends, you get a final chapter through the eyes of this child of witnessing these events in October of 1942. So that's an overview of The Plot Against America. Now it's time to evaluate it. So how would I rate The Plot Against America? I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 10. I did not like this alternate history book at all. It's among the worst books I've read. It may even be worse than S.M. Sterling's book, The Sky People, and it's not as bad as the Yiddish Policemen's Union, but still it's quite bad, because first of all, a lot of the characters are unlikable. So you have, for example, the parents suddenly hitting their kids, and you have several characters who speak of other people in a disgusting way. This book glorifies people like Franklin D. Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson, even though Woodrow Wilson was the president who turned the USA into a police state during World War I for a year, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt actually put Japanese Americans in concentration camps, citizens of the United States in concentration camps. I think this book kind of caricatures the non-interventionists in the United States and Republicans in general. They're treated as fascists or Nazis or sympathizers to those people, and they're all portrayed as anti-Semites. Now sure, they talk about Henry Ford in this book, and sure, he was a strong anti-Semite, but would he actually be included in the US government as he is included here as Secretary of Interior? No, that's not plausible. Billionaires are not made cabinet members usually in US politics, so that's implausible. And there's this talk about how Lindbergh is a Nazi and a fascist and he's going after the Jews, but Lindbergh never really does anything against the Jews. What happens to the Jews happens after he disappears from the vice president who's acting president. So the pacing is really off in this book, and a lot of this book is just following the life of a 9-10-year-old child in Newark, and it's quite boring. You follow this kid stalking Christians, which is a bit weird, and there wasn't really any character from the main cast of characters that I liked in this book. And while most of this book is very boring, then the penultimate chapter is an info dump, which is kind of interesting, although it's ludicrous. And then the final chapter just goes through the same events in a much more boring way. So would I recommend The Plot Against America? No, not at all. And if you want to read a better book of the United States slowly turning into a dictatorship, then you should check out Harry Turtledove's Joe Steele. It's not plausible, but it's a very fun book to read and very entertaining. Anyway, I'm the avid reader, and I will see you readers next time.